I just finished recording my very first podcast to my patrons, and it's weird. Nobody told me it was gonna be this hard to keep talking to yourself for like an hour. Wow. It's funny how when we begin doing these things, like for example, filming vlogs or making YouTube videos or posting more often on social media, how you get like this newfound appreciation for people who have done it for a long time and people who do it constantly. Because when we just consume stuff, we're like, oh yeah, this must be easy, like it's something that they love doing, so it must be like really fun and just like smooth and easy again. But then when you actually get to do it, it's like, wow, there are so many steps, and it's not that smooth because you're learning how to do it. So there's this learning curve that comes with everything, and then you're so self-conscious about everything in the beginning, and we forget how that is the whole point of like learning, and the whole point of having a process to get to a more comfortable situation where you're less aware of the steps that you have to take. And that's the whole point of practicing, is to get to the point where you're more comfortable, where you are more comfortable about doing things. Wow. It's really interesting to have these kind of breakthroughs while you're doing some things for the first time, isn't it? I'll let you think about the last thing you've done something for the first time and how it felt. How's that, huh? Turning tables here.
Maybe you're in Australia, maybe even on the coast, disguised in regalia and making the most of the most of a Maybe you're in Australia, maybe even on the coast, disguised in regalia and making the most of the most.
Hi, voiceover me coming here to say that it's been a funny ride with gouache. I've been trying to paint more and more traditionally just because it's fun to get out of the screen for a little bit. And gouache has been my all-time favorite. Well, probably because it's so flat and matte that, I don't know, it's just so soothing to see something so flat. And I find it incredible how it doesn't really matter the quality of the paper, because I'm using a paper that I hate using watercolors with, which is the Canson XL. I think this one is watercolor, not mixed media. Yeah, this one is the watercolor one, and I hate it because, well, it really doesn't do justice to watercolors, and it's definitely not anything close to a cotton paper, 100% cotton. So I wouldn't normally use this paper with anything else, but with gouache it's just perfect. It's like, actually I haven't tried gouache with good quality paper to see if there is any difference, but I just enjoyed this one so much that I stuck with it. But what I was gonna say actually was about the paint itself. I was so happy with how the properties of like being able to achieve very flat areas of paint, and then it's just so beautiful because it's completely even, more than markers and Copics. I noticed I was using the paint straight out of the tube all the time. And it took me a while to understand why I was doing it, because in the very beginning I would always mix it up with a little bit of water. I think you're gonna see me right now dipping the brush in water, tapping it on the paper a little bit, and then painting. And that's the ideal thing to do for the consistency that I enjoy painting with. But for a few other times that I painted, I just used it straight out of the tube, and I thought that that was because it made it easier to go flat and completely cover the sketch. In this painting here, I think I printed, yeah, I definitely printed on the paper, like I printed my sketch on the paper, and it's a lot darker than what I usually do, so I had to use a very thick layer of paint to cover that sketch. and that's usually not a problem because I don't usually print it that strong. But then I kind of got used to using the paint so thick to cover anything, and to just need like one layer of paint to cover whatever I need to cover. But then the habit took me to only using the paint straight out of the tube, and I was getting super frustrated because it wouldn't take that long for me to have to load the brush again, and then all of a sudden it was so annoying to paint because I was constantly dipping my brush and I could barely like paint anything without having to load the brush all the time. And it was getting kind of annoying and frustrating. So I thought it was my brushes because I always use synthetic brushes. So I went over the store to buy a natural bristle brush. Not really natural because it's still like imitation. It's not animal brush. And I thought that would be the problem because the synthetic ones wouldn't carry a lot of paint. Like the brush would not load as much. And I thought that was the problem. But then I realized it was actually the consistency of the paint, and I didn't really need to go buy another brush. I just needed to play with the water a little bit more. And when I realized that, I was like, wow, why did I have to go buy something? I feel so dumb and silly. Then I remembered that I got slightly confused because you know how different pigments behave differently from each other, and sometimes it's quite confusing when you don't remember that all the time, when you forget that they're different pigments that you're working with. So I would use a pigment like yellows or red. They're very transparent, just the pigment themselves, and I would not use water with them just because they're already very transparent, so I would want something thicker. But then I would go to paint something else with blues that tend to be a little bit more opaque, at least the blues that I use, and I wouldn't add any water at all, and that would cause the paint to be very, very thick in a way that it was not comfortable to work with because it was too thick. And since the paint is already very opaque, I could add a little bit more water just to like ease out the washes and make the paint flow a little bit easier. So I'm spending some fun times practicing a little bit more with gouache. And it reminds me that that's the whole point of practicing and the whole point of like doing something for a long time or repeating it so many times, because you just learn, and not learn only because, for example, pigments, you can study them and you can, memorize a few properties of a few pigments. For example, cadmiums tend to be transparent, but if you don't practice, you're just gonna forget that because your brain is not gonna keep remembering every single thing all the time. And it's only when you actually get down to painting and just doing it all the time that you're gonna remember that these colors, if you use the same colors, the same palette, these colors need more water, those don't. And then you kind of get the muscle memory, that kind of intuition that you don't even think about anymore. You just do it because you're so used to it. So here was a little something, my little ramblings for the day. I hope you enjoyed watching the video. I have missed making YouTube videos because, you know, they're fun. I love watching paintings becoming a thing from scratch. It's so satisfying. So I hope you enjoyed it, and I'll see you on the next video. Bye!